Why the Greek Bible was banned. The shocking power struggle. Picture a time in ancient history, not merely divided by languages, but by profound spiritual and cultural fissures. The very fabric of belief, faith, and religious authority trembled in the balance. In this delicate world, a sacred text, translated from one language to another, became not just a symbol of connection, but a powerful tool of influence and control. This is the stirring, emotionally charged story of the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, whose existence became so potent a force that it threatened the very structures of power, eventually leading to its banning. The story begins in the 3rd century BCE. Jewish communities, now scattered across the Mediterranean, find themselves no longer a people of one tongue. Immersed in the rise of Greek culture and influence, many Jews living in Hellenistic cities like Alexandria have lost their fluency in Hebrew, the sacred language of their ancestors, their prayers, and their scriptures. Their faith is at risk of fading. In response, the Septuagint emerges, a beacon of survival. It is the first translation of the Hebrew Bible into Greek, not merely a linguistic shift, but a spiritual lifeline. For these Jews, it represents a way to maintain their faith in a world where Greek is now dominant. But this story is more than a tale of language. It is a matter of survival. How could the Jewish people continue to believe in their God if they could no longer understand his sacred words? The Septuagint provided the answer. Commissioned under the reign of the Ptolemaic king of Egypt, Jewish scholars gathered to translate the Hebrew scriptures. Legend has it that 72 scholars, 6 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel, undertook this monumental task. The translation became more than a document. It was a profound symbol of unity between the Jewish and Greek worlds. It allowed Jews to remain connected to their faith and, for the first time, offered the wider world a glimpse into the mysteries of the Jewish God. For a time, this translation became a bridge across divided worlds. Jewish thought mingled with Greek philosophy, and for a brief moment, the possibility of spiritual unity seemed within reach in a world fractured by culture, language, and war. But such fragile hopes seldom endure. What began as a gift soon became a threat. The act of translation itself was fraught with peril, as subtle differences began to emerge. The most profound of these discrepancies occurred in the prophecy of Isaiah 7:14. The original Hebrew referred to a young woman who would conceive. But in the Greek Septuagint, the term parthenos, meaning virgin, was used, a small shift with immense consequences. This seemingly minor difference would forever alter religious history. For early Christians, this passage became proof that Jesus Christ was the Messiah, born of a virgin and fulfilling ancient prophecy. As Christianity, still in its infancy, spread rapidly among both Jews and Gentiles, the Septuagint became the Bible of choice for many early Christians. But as Christianity grew, it began to diverge sharply from Judaism. Jewish leaders, recognizing the theological implications of the Septuagint's translation, started distancing themselves from it. What was once a cherished text now became a dangerous tool, one that Christians used to assert that Jesus was the fulfillment of Jewish prophecy. Imagine the tension. For Jews, the Septuagint, once a source of unity, now became a weapon wielded by a growing Christian movement. For Christians, it was irrefutable proof of their beliefs. And from this clash, the seeds of the Septuagint's eventual ban were sown. As Christianity spread across the Roman Empire, the Septuagint remained central to early Christian worship, particularly in the Greek-speaking regions. But this rise in Christian power did not sit well with everyone. The early centuries of the Roman Empire were marked by political and religious maneuvering. Roman authorities, observing the growing influence of Christianity, saw the Septuagint as more than a religious text. It was a political instrument, and in the ancient world, power was everything. By the 2nd century CE, Jewish scholars had largely abandoned the Septuagint, returning to the Hebrew texts. They viewed the Septuagint as corrupted, manipulated by Christians to support their claim that Jesus was the prophesied Messiah. Meanwhile, Christian leaders embraced the Septuagint, using it in their teachings, liturgies, and theological arguments. As Latin grew dominant in the Western Church, the Septuagint's influence began to wane. Western Christians, seeking a Latin version of the Scriptures, turned to Saint Jerome, who, in the late 4th century, translated the Bible into Latin, creating the Vulgate. This was no simple translation. It was a strategic move designed to consolidate the power of the Western Church. By endorsing the Vulgate, the Western Church could control the interpretation of Scripture, ensuring unity in doctrine and protecting it from external influences. In this decision, we can see the true reason the Septuagint was banned. It wasn't merely about theology, it was about control. To control Scripture was to control the very narrative of faith. The Septuagint, once a cornerstone of early Christian belief, was gradually pushed aside in favor of the Vulgate. The Church, state, and religious leaders all understood that power rested in the authority over sacred texts. And what better way to maintain that power than by controlling the words of God? Yet, the Septuagint was not so easily erased. The growing divide between East and West, Greek and Latin, would reach its climax in 1054 CE with the Great Schism, the official split between the Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic churches. Beneath this theological rupture lay deeper tensions of culture, language, and scripture. The Eastern Orthodox Church held firmly to the Septuagint, regarding it as divinely inspired and integral to their tradition. The Western Church, now rooted in Latin, held the Vulgate as the authoritative text. Can you feel the weight of this divide? Two branches of Christianity, both devoted to the same Christ, unable to reconcile their differences over the very foundation of their faith. The Bible. The Septuagint, once a symbol of unity, had become a symbol of division. For centuries, the Septuagint remained contentious. In the West, it was largely forgotten, dismissed as a relic of a bygone era. In the East, it continued to be revered, held as the true Old Testament, the version used by the apostles themselves. How could something so sacred become so divisive? The Septuagint had bridged cultures, languages, and faiths, but it was precisely these bridges that made it dangerous to those who sought to control the narrative. And so, in the West, the Septuagint was banned, forgotten, buried under centuries of Latin dominance. But the story does not end there. In the modern era, the Septuagint was rediscovered. Scholars of the Renaissance, driven by the quest to return to original sources, found in the Septuagint more than just a translation. It was a window into how the Bible was understood in the ancient world. They discovered that the Septuagint preserved older traditions, some that diverged from the Hebrew texts which had become standard in later Judaism. It contained books like Tobit, Judith, and the Wisdom of Solomon, texts cherished by early Christians but later cast aside in the West. The Septuagint also illuminated the New Testament, revealing that many Old Testament quotations found in the New Testament were taken from the Septuagint, not the Hebrew Bible. This was a profound revelation. The Septuagint, long dismissed as a relic, now stood as a key to understanding the very roots of Christianity. Scholars, theologians, and religious leaders began to re-examine the Septuagint. It became a tool for ecumenical dialogue, an opportunity for Catholic, Orthodox, and Protestant traditions to come together and explore their shared history. The Septuagint was rising from the ashes of obscurity. Yet, as we look back, we are left to ponder. What if? What if the Septuagint had never been banned? What if the Western Church had embraced it alongside the Vulgate? Would the Great Schism have occurred? Would Christianity have unfolded differently? These questions haunt us. The ban of the Septuagint was never merely about theology. It was about control. Who had the authority to shape the narrative, to declare what was orthodox and what was heresy? And in that struggle for control, something precious was lost. Yet, the Septuagint's story is not over. Today, as its significance is rediscovered, we are reminded of the power of Scripture, not only to inspire, but also to divide, to control, and ultimately, to unite. The journey of the Septuagint is one of hope, betrayal, division, and rediscovery. Born in an era of cultural fusion, it became a bridge between worlds, only to become a symbol of division. Its banning was not a historical footnote, it was a defining moment in the history of Christianity. Today, the Septuagint stands as a reminder that the Bible is not merely a text, it is a living document shaped by those who wield it. Though banned, the Septuagint's legacy endures, offering a glimpse into the ancient world and the early days of our faith. In the end, the story of the Septuagint is our story, a story of faith, power, and the eternal search for truth.